I'm Whitney.
I'm Mindy.
And I'm Deb.
We're three best friends who love nerdy things.
Well, some people think we're nerdy, but we think we're pretty awesome.
This is Our Nerdiest Thing.
This season, we are discussing Jennifer L. Armentrout's From Blood and Ash, all of the books in that series, plus the Flesh and Fire series as well. We are spoiler friendly, so listen at your own risk. Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to Our Nerdiest Thing. Today we are discussing From Blood and Ash, chapters 17, 18, and 19. But before we get into it, Deb, will you please share our nerdiest cocktail?
Of course. So tonight's cocktail is a gateway bourbon cocktail. You've heard of gateway drugs. This is a gateway bourbon cocktail. And if you've been listening, you know we live in Kentucky. All bourbon is made here.
Right.
It's amazing. So if you don't like bourbon, this is a really good one to start with.
It's me.
It's for Whitney. And she does like this cocktail. She's liked all the bourbon cocktails we've had. So
That's true. They have
Right.
been the best bourbon cocktails.
So if you've ever heard of a brown derby, this is Macon Muddle's take on that really, really yummy spring cocktail, the brown derby. So it's good for fighting on the rise recovery and super fresh with the juices. That's from our cocktail evangelist.
Oh my gosh.
Cocktail evangelist. So
naughty.
it's called I Need Better Shoes. It's got bourbon and grapefruit juice and lime juice and the honey lavender elixir from Macon Muddle. And you're also going to need some fresh mint. So spring's around the corner. Hopefully you've got some of those, what Claire Fraser would call herbs growing in the window. They're herbs, Claire, for the record. They're not herbs. They're herbs.
Herb sounds like that guy that you dated and was like the big nerd in college.
But he still tried to put it in your butt.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, you've heard what Herb tries to do to you, right? Okay, so yeah.
I did not have that experience.
So the cocktail's called I Need Better Shoes.
I do love that name.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Well, Mindy, will you please spin the wheel of names and let us know who's doing our nerdiest recap?
I know you're going to be super excited about it. It's Deb.
It's Deb!
Oh, fuck. Oh, shit.
Here, let me get the 30 seconds.
Oh, my God.
timer.
Hold on. I'm not ready.
It's too late.
No.
All right, I've got the timer.
Okay.
Ready,
All right.
set, go.
Oh my God, I have no fucking clue. Okay, so Hawk does corner Poppy and asks, "What has he done to you?" Which is one of our favorite tropes, right? Where he's asking about the Duke, and then he goes and tells Victor that she was out on the rise. Victor's pissed, and then all of a sudden, the Duke and the Duchess are talking to all of Macedonia, and they're giving a really, really horrible speech on how people should be terrified, even though they shouldn't be. And then someone goes, "From blood and ash, we will rise," and throws a hand up on the balcony.
Very excellent.
So excellent.
It's better than what I was going to do.
So speaking of excellent, it was like, "From blood and ash, we will rise." Apparently, I live in
I
California.
was going to say, you did sound like a surfer boy when you said that.
Yeah, I'm super stoned, and I'm like, "Dude, they've got From Blood and Ash. It's rad."
Yeah, I was like, it's like if Bill and Ted went to
Bill and Ted go to Solace.
That sounds like another bonus episode.
Sounds good to me. Jennifer Armentrout, we ship it.
Before we get into the details of these chapters, Mindy, will you please do our nerdiest vocabulary?
I will. So in this chapter, we find out the Duchess's first name, which again, I totally forgot.
I missed that. What is it?
It's Jacinda.
Jacinda, like the jacaranda trees.
I was trying to figure out how to pronounce it that, but no.
Jacinda.
Interestingly enough, it is based on a flower, so we'll get to that. In Greek origins, it means beautiful, so that kind of tracks.
Yeah, she is supposed to be beautiful.
And then in Spanish and Portuguese origins, it's a variation of Jacinta, which means hyacinth. So it is a flower. And then, of course, I had to go to my floriography because I'm a big nerd
I was
like that.
just about to ask.
Is that a thing? Is that
Remember when I talked
floriography?
about floriography?
We talk about a lot of shit, dude. I love you tons, but even outside of the podcast, we talk a lot.
That is true. So there apparently are several different colors of hyacinth. So the blue ones signify constancy. I don't know about that. The purple signifies sorrow, or you give that to somebody if you want them to forgive you.
She should want people to
She
forgive.
should. Red or pink means playful. I don't feel like the Duchess is playful at all.
Wrong.
White means unobtrusive loveliness, which I feel like she's maybe a white hyacinth. And then yellow means jealousy.
Okay, the Duchess is wearing yellow in this scene.
I was going to ask, do we
she
know what
is?
she's wearing?
She's wearing a yellow gown in this scene.
So it means jealousy.
Jealous of Poppy and her powers.
Maybe?
Because she does start
freak out
lying
about
her
it.
ass
And
off.
she flips out.
Yeah, she does.
Yes,
and she's like,
she
"Wait, can you feel what I'm feeling right now?" Because I had
Yeah.
questions about that.
I know.
I do too. I can't wait to get to that part. So anyway, and very, very good catch, Deb.
Well, because it was so pointed out that I was going to ask you guys why it was important that she was wearing yellow. Now we know.
Maybe now we
Didn't
know.
notice. I did not know.
And it was all yellow. What's that song? Is that Coldplay?
Yes.
Yeah.
There. Yellow by Coldplay.
Another curious kind of thing that I found was that in Greek symbolism, and I don't know why that's different than origins of the word. So it's not really
Right.
etymology. It's more of a symbolic notion. It means rashness and woe.
Ooh, that works for the Duchess.
Yes. And then, of course, I had to go to my trusty Urban Dictionary. And I was a little disappointed, actually, because everything was mostly positive. I was like, oh, Jacinda's this beautiful lady. And she's like
No.
wonderful. And she's so sweet. And I'm
Well,
like,
she is beautiful, and I mean,
Right, she
she does act sweet towards
I was just
Poppy.
going to say,
So, yeah.
at this point, she is a positive in Poppy's life. She doesn't actively do anything hurtful the way that the Duke does, right?
Can I ask, whenever, and this is us jumping forward a little bit, so we get through the rite, quote unquote, and everyone's dead, right? And whenever Jacinta and Poppy are in the room with Lord Mazine and Poppy loses her shit, does Jacinta survive?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so she's still like alive and kicking, even through War of Two Queens?
No.
When does she die?
I was going to talk about it when we...
Oh, let's get there.
yeah.
well, hang
I was
on.
gonna talk
I've got
about it
one.
Hold that thought.
But I did find one entry in the Urban Dictionary that was oddly accurate. And this is how it went. And it's not talking about this book, I don't think. I mean, it wasn't. Actually, it said something about what you name your dog or something. I know, which I left off. But after that, it said probably will not lead you very well and has teeth that might hurt you.
Ooh.
But knows how to smile while suckers believe every bloody thing she says.
Oh, wow.
Oh, maybe that is about this.
What are they talking about if they're not talking about this?
Yeah.
Or they've dated someone named Jacinta and
It
they're
was
like, fuck that bitch.
Oddly accurate. I
feel
thought
like-
that might be exactly how you would describe
I feel like everything negative on Urban Dictionary is someone broke up with them and they're like pissed off.
it 100% is.
Yeah, we should go on there and just fill in some
Revenge
shit.
Urban Dictionary entries.
Yeah.
So, yes, that was Jacinda.
I was going to just say revenge entry. And then I was like, that sounds wrong.
That's illegal.
Herb does.
No, Herb.
Herbs.
Herbs.
So, giving context to the start of this series of chapters is the fight on the rise, right? Poppy and Hawk. Hawk found Poppy out on the rise. She was fighting against the Craven, basically.
Is it safe to say that he got a rise?
Oh, I think he definitely did.
I did.
Sure
I think
that-
she felt his
I was
rise.
going to say, I think she says that she felt his rise, like when he pulled her in close at one
Oh,
point.
there's something on my back. Sorry.
Yeah. And so he lets her go. She goes back to her room. So at the beginning of this series of chapters, Hawk has just come in to Poppy's room and is like, we need to talk. Except it was hot. Like, we need to talk.
Hey, Tawny, leave me and my princess alone.
Yeah, so basically their whole conversation is him trying to understand her, trying to understand why she went on the rise, like what her motivation is, because at this point he still does not know very much about her, right? Like he has made a lot of assumptions about what he thinks the maiden is going to be like, and the more time he spends with her, the more he realizes that she is very different than what he thought. So he's trying to understand her and why she was out there, and he's also trying to get, like you said in the recap, Deb, he's trying to find out what's the deal with the Duke. Like, there's something weird about that whole thing. What is it?
I also think he's kind of trying to seduce her, though. So, because the first thing he says is, "You have beautiful hair," and then I wrote "Good Lord" after this paragraph. he says, you have beautiful hair. And she says, is that what you wanted to talk about? And he said, not exactly. Then his gaze dipped and roamed slowly, starting at my shoulders, moving all the way down to the tips of my toes. His stare was heavy, almost like a touch, and a flush followed in his wake. And I swear to God, I had an orgasm. Have you ever had someone look at you like that? I mean, it is like palpable. You can like feel the sexual tension in the room.
I can't say that I have had anybody ever look at me like that, but I felt it.
Maybe that's why I was sluttier than you guys.
I just think I didn't turn anybody on that way.
I think that you weren't paying attention because you're beautiful and amazing, and I've looked at you like that a bunch of times.
I'm looking at you like that right now.
How do the tips of your toes feel right now?
Kind of curling.
They're curling in your boots.
Perfect response. I love this scene. I mean, I love all of the Hawk and Poppy scenes. The banter is just, especially with Tawny.
Have you noticed, too, that Tawny's just calling her princess now?
I know.
Yes,
she is not using her name at this point.
Yeah, she immediately is like, yes, I enjoy that nickname, and I also will call you princess.
Right, and like smiles at Hawk every time she does it. Like, haha.
She thinks it's hilarious. I love how Hawk is basically like, this is one of the most important things to have happened to you in a long time. And she's like, you have an overinflated sense of involvement in my life, if you really think that. And he says, I think I have a good grasp on just how much of a role I play in your life. And I love the like meta.
Yeah.
What am I trying to say? The meta-ness? That's not a word.
Well, like the foreshadowing of.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a much smarter way to say what I'm trying to say.
That foreshadowing is so meta.
It's so meta because he's got this big grand plan, right? That she has no
That
idea.
is not what I thought you were going to say.
Well, he's got
one of those too.
He's got something big, and it's not his grand plan.
Yeah,
his plan is big, but so is his dick.
Anyway,
dicks.
There were a lot of things that I wrote LOL next to, and that was one of them. Of like, you know, she thinks he's being basically just arrogant, and he's like, no, I'm very important to you. And neither one of them, even at this point, realize how important each of them are to each other.
They
right?
kind of do, though. Like, they have this whole interchange where they're like, isn't it weird that we're so drawn to each other?
Yeah.
Isn't it weird that we're so
comfortable with each other?
Yeah, they're already starting to feel that heartmate bond.
Well, I always love a story when he falls first.
Yeah,
and he definitely falls first. Because,
immediately.
He is so much like, he's like, you feel this, right? Like, you feel this connection we got going on here?
This is just me.
What are
and
we?
She doesn't say it out loud, but she thinks it.
Oh,
which is hilarious. 100%. Also,
yeah. I wrote a lot of LOLs. I love the description of Tawny watching them go back and forth, like she's whipping her head from one to the other like a tennis.
Well, and she doesn't want to leave. She's like, well, this is super entertaining. Yeah. Why do I have to leave if Poppy's just going to tell me later?
Right. Yeah. And he's like, just go. Just let me have this conversation.
GTFO, please.
She's going to tell you. You're going to find out eventually. Just let me do this. He's like trying to figure all this stuff out, and he straight up tells her, "You are nothing like I expected." Yes. I wrote rut-row because that's part of the problem for him, right? Is part of the reason that he's falling for her is because she's a really good person and she's really, really strong and smart and funny, and he did not.
And the complete opposite of what he expected.
Well, he thought we've talked about this before, was going to be shallow and not give a shit about anyone and kind of be on the ascended side of things, and she's really not.
He probably thought she was going to be like Lauren and whatever that were fainting.
Exactly. Yeah. And so he's like, it'll be easy to snatch her up because she doesn't give a shit about anyone. And so why would I think of her as an important person?
Right.
I'm
not going to give a shit about her because she's not going to care about anybody else.
Right.
Yeah. I wrote retro. He's trying to figure out, okay, you've been trained, so clearly Victor trained you, right? Yeah. And clearly something weird is going on with the Duke. Like, tell me what's going on with that. And like, why are you out there on the rise? Why are you fighting against the Craven?
And if you listen to the audiobook, which I very much think you should, even if you're doing like a read along and want to listen to the audio while you're reading, because I love the narrator for these, Nina Stinson, which they change in the War of Two Queens. And I'm like, why'd you do that? They added like a guy to it, and I don't like him as much. But like, he's literally like, what did he do to you? And you're like, I want to know too. listen to the audiobook, folks.
Last episode, I talked about a couple of little details about Hawk's facial expressions and like what that was about, and how when she put the bow on her back, he like made a face, and I was saying like I think he's putting two and two together. And so I wrote in my notes from this chapter, I think that he definitely figured out that the Duke is abusing her out on the rise, because it seems to me that this whole conversation of coming to talk to her is really just about trying to get her to talk about the Duke.
Yeah,
again,
100%.
right?
And I kind of mentioned when we were talking about that too, that maybe he also figured out that that Victor was the one that trained her, and I think he kind of did in that moment as well.
And he confirms that with her.
Well, and she hisses in pain on the rise, and you know that he can hear everything. Well, later you find that out. So I mean, he knows she's in pain from something, and he also is like, "Well, why were you in your room for 2 days?
Yeah,
Why didn't I see you for 2 days after you were summoned?"
She talks in these chapters repeatedly about how observant he is. And she's like, I've got to remember how observant he is.
Right. Well, I wrote down, he has only been around her personally for a few days. Mm-hmm. And he's already noticed the weirdness with the Duke. He's noticed that she is not anything like the other girls in the court. He sees her compassion. He recognizes her sympathy for him when they're talking at the Red Pearl. Like, she has genuine empathy for other people. He notices her defending Tawny at the risk of herself to him when he calls her like a servant or something. And she's like, no, she's my friend. He notices that she is upset with the Tulis conversation and that whole decision with the Duke and the Duchess. He sees her fighting skills and is able to put together like how that happened. And he sees her bravery both on the rise in the chapter before this, but also with Jericho, because he knows that whole situation, right? She just doesn't realize it yet. But overall, he sees that she is a decent person that cares about other people. And he, I feel like anybody that spends any amount of time with Poppy sees that she's a decent person that cares about other people. Like, it doesn't take long to notice that if you are paying attention to her. And he is extremely observant. He notices all this stuff, which again is like oh no.
And we're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, for him it's like, oh crap, this is not gonna go the way that I thought it was going to go, which ends up being a really good thing, but it's kind of stressful for him and for Poppy for quite some time.
Do you love too how in this chapter we find out we see more of his penchant for violent women?
Yeah.
I love that whole exchange where she's like, she stomps her foot, and he's like, well, did that make you feel better? And she was like, well, I wanted to kick you. And he was like, so violent.
Yeah. He loves every second of it. Yeah. They do talk, like you were saying, Mindy, about the weird like comfort level with each other, the weird feeling of familiarity. And, we've only known each other for a few days. That shouldn't be like that. And they both recognize it. And Poppy specifically is like, I wish, she doesn't say this, she thinks it, but like, I wish that I could take that comfort feeling and like go further with it, but I can't because I'm the maiden. And she basically says to herself, the fact that I'm so disappointed that I can't do anything about it tells me that I've already like gone too far.
Girl, you fucked.
Right, exactly. Like both of them are,
and she knows that.
Right.
But she still doesn't want to pursue
do anything about it. Yeah.
It's a terrible, vicious cycle to be in.
Right. It's like, I know I've gone too far emotionally because I feel this
bad
way.
For her.
I know, but I'm not going to do anything. But I mean, she continues to go further emotionally with him.
Yeah.
And physically too.
Oh.
And yeah, when they talk about going out on the rise, she explains to him her background with what happened with her parents, the Craven attack, how she got her scars, which he did not know at this point. Because in that bonus chapter with his POV, he only knows that her parents have died, that she has a brother named Ian, and that's like all he knows about her.
But it's crazy that Victor didn't tell him she was attacked by Craven. It seems like something that Victor would have
told
him.
I think that's her story to tell, because she actually mentions that only 2 other people, which I have a question about that. She says something about only 2 other people know he would be the third person to know about it, but the Duke and the Duchess know about it, right?
I think that they do know about it.
They just don't know the full story.
Well,
maybe?
I don't know that Poppy knows that
they know about it. Gotcha.
At this point.
Gotcha.
So she's saying Tawny and Victor.
Yes.
I think Ian and Victor.
Well, where does Tawny think the scars came from?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Well,
that's true.
I may be misremembering because I told you guys before we started recording, I've been rereading the whole series. And so I'm like, wait, when did we find this out?
And we talked about this last week. I read ahead a chapter last week because I was like, I can't stop now. And I was really struggling last week when we recorded because I was like, wait, did that happen yet?
Right, exactly.
God, these books are so good.
Well, part of the secrecy of her scars is the fact that she was bit by a craven.
Right.
And
she shouldn't have survived, or she should have become a craven.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think part of it is that people think she was just clawed by the craven and not actually bitten.
Okay.
But in this conversation, she tells him that she got bit.
Yeah.
Right?
Where was she bit? Her thigh?
Her thigh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was this conversation.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's some sort of symbolism behind getting bit on your thigh, because that also, like, we see that in Crescent City too.
It's like a major artery.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, your femoral artery. Yeah.
Yeah, because in Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, book 2.
Well, please tell everyone what this segment is called.
Oh, this is from Blood and Ash Storytime. In book 2, Cass is basically like, I want to have sex and bite you at the same time. And let me tell you about all these veins you have, which when you think about it is like,
that's some sexy talk.
yeah, like, ew. But when
I did not think ew.
Castile does it, it's like,
It's
yeah,
not ew when he does it,
tell
but like
me.
when you, I mean, if my husband said, let's talk about your veins, that I would be like, no.
He doesn't talk.
gross.
He doesn't really talk about her veins.
Well, no, he's just saying like, here are these different places that I could like draw blood from you that I think you would like. And one of them is the thigh and one of them is the clit. So.
Yeah, yes it is. I'm not sad about it.
But yeah, so
I've also never heard you say the word clit.
I know.
I second guessed myself, but
I'm glad you went for
If
it.
you had called it a bundle of nerves, we would have kicked you off the podcast.
the apex of her thighs.
My sensitive area.
Oh, that's really funny. Yeah, so basically this whole conversation ends with Poppy sharing a really vulnerable piece of her life with Hawk and him understanding that, because one of the things that she talks about a lot later throughout the next couple of books is how she loves the fact that Hawk didn't tell her, well, don't go back out on the rise. You shouldn't be out there. That's not safe for you. Like, he understands where she's coming from. He gets why she feels the need to defend herself and other people. And he gives her advice on how to do it better.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to stop her from doing it at all. And that really means a lot to her. And it means a lot to him to find out this piece of truth of like how she became the way that she is.
Right.
So can we talk a little bit about how he's like, so I heard about this child of the gods that goes and helps people die with dignity, right? And it kind of starts the conversation about how she finds out that he's also been doing that, which brings them closer.
I'd forgotten about that.
But
by the
it's
way.
so cute when she's like, well, holy fuck, if you heard the rumor, who else is talking about it? And he even says that the guards like revere her and they would never turn her in because that's why they love her, not because she's the maiden. The maiden. So, but it's so funny whenever she's like, well, shit, if other people have heard about it. And he's like, let me reiterate. When I say I heard a rumor, it was because I asked.
Right? No, they were talking directly to me.
Yes.
And I asked blatantly, you know.
Because back to that bonus chapter, before he meets her at all, Commander Jansen is like, everybody loves her and I don't know why. So he has taken it upon himself to figure out why. Yeah, like everybody loves this girl that they're not even supposed to like know anything about. So what's up with that? So yeah.
And what's funny about it is what he loves about her is not necessarily what they love about her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because she's showing him more of her life
True
than,
self.
than almost anybody gets to see, right? It's basically like Victor and Tawny, but even Tawny she doesn't share that much with because she still doesn't trust that Tawny's her actual friend and isn't going to go back and tell the Duchess stuff. So
can we go back to the story she tells about the Craven attack? Because I actually had a few questions. Mm-hmm. First thing, she talks about how the inn smelled like cinnamon and cloves. Is there a significance there? Because it seems very odd that she would point that out. And I feel like that's something that later on she talks about an emotion that smells like that.
There might be. But I remember when I made my PowerPoint before.
Yes.
I did the same thing of like, she describes emotions as like flavors of food and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But I didn't find anything
I just
that
thought it was
made a connection.
odd
but I
that
thought
that was
the same thing.
And then she also talks about how there's a woman that pulls Ian into a room and she just leaves Poppy there. And Poppy's like, well, because I wasn't going to go with her. But if I was somebody that was trying to save somebody, I would be like, bitch, get in here. Like,
Yeah.
she's leading him away. And then somebody gives him cookies or something later?
I wonder if that woman knows that Poppy will survive, but Ian wouldn't.
I don't know. We
Well-
don't know anything more at this point about anybody else in that situation. We don't even really know about her parents any more detail.
What it made me wonder about was that woman planted there? Did she know things? And that was this all just a test to see if Poppy could survive that attack or something?
No.
Okay. I'm just curious because it just was so weird. It was very descriptive and
It is.
Do you love how confident Whitney
I
is?
know, but he's like, no.
No, you dumb bitch. What? No, what is it?
say it like
I know, I'm
that.
joking. What is it on How I Met Your Mother whenever Jennifer Lopez is on there and she's like, no, you dumb bitch. She doesn't love you. Like she wrote that book. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't remember that. But.
I'm just kidding. I really don't think that. But you are very confident.
This
No.
is why I write these questions down because I know that Whitney will be able to tell me yes or no.
Again, what is this segment called?
From Blood
Blood
and
and
Ash
Ash
story
story
time.
time.
So through by the end of the War of Two Queens, here's what we know about the Night of the End. So Coralina is not her actual mom. She was a handmaiden to Isbeth. Isbeth had given Poppy to Coralina for her to pretend that Poppy was her daughter because Isbeth didn't want anybody to know that she had a baby. So at some point, Coralina decided, or found out, I guess, the plan for Poppy, which I'm assuming means that Coralina found out that Isbeth was working with Colas and that her plan was ultimately to sacrifice Poppy when she hit the culling. So regardless of whatever, she found out a plan for Poppy and was like, yeah, I can't be a part of this. And she was trying to whisk her away and escape to Atlantia.
Okay.
So she and Leopold, Coralina and Leopold, wow.
Leopold.
Got in touch with Alistair, who,
I
fucker.
forgot about that
this
they were
point was helping smuggle people out
Right.
of Solus. And they told him who Poppy was and what she could do, which he immediately registered.
Saw as the harbinger of death, right?
But also a descendant of Malek. He thought it was one of Malek's descendants, which it kind of was, but not really.
Yeah.
And so he was never going to take them to Solus. However, Alistair didn't actually have to do anything because Malik, Castiel's brother, escaped from Carcedonia to kill Poppy.
Right.
Because he is heartmates with Millie.
Right.
And was trying to stop this whole plan from happening to raise Colas and all that stuff. So he's the dark one in the inn.
Mm-hmm.
He led the Craven to the inn to kill Poppy.
Right.
Not as a test, but to kill her.
Okay.
To get rid of her. And Alistair just let it happen. I don't think that he knew that it was Malik
Okay.
that
Was
brought
the
the
one that
Craven.
did- yeah.
I don't think he knew that.
I think it was a really happy accident.
Yes.
And Alistair was like, oh, okay, cool.
I'll
Yes.
just go.
Now I don't
along
have to
with
worry
this.
about it.
Yeah.
Well, and so I think he thought, until he met Poppy in book 2, I think Alistair thought, well, the Craven killed them all, and I'm done with that
Yeah.
now. And he didn't ever put together that the maiden he heard about later was that same little girl.
Okay.
So it wasn't I would imagine that the people, the lady that was with the cookies and all that stuff, I feel like they were all dissenters
Just
who were
kind of
part of
helping. They were just being helpful.
They were probably part of a system of like, this was a place that if you were trying to get back to Atlantia.
It was a safe space, like a safe space.
Well, and Coralina had Poppy, and she's like, well, there's Ian without anyone protecting him, so I'm going to pull him into this room and protect him against the Craven.
The lady that was there at the end pulled Ian.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's another question that I'm not super certain about. When is she presented as the maiden? Is this before this attack, after this attack? When does that all come about? Because she's born in a shroud, so like
I don't think we know that for sure, because when Poppy is trying to remember, she keeps having all these dreams about that night and is like, I'm not sure what's real and what's not. She says, I can't remember. Like, if
she's very specific though about when the Duke started giving her lessons, which was around the age 13, I think. Mm-hmm. So I assume that's when she became the maiden.
I think she became the maiden while she was still in because when Coralina and Leopold died, they took her back to Carcedonia, to the capital, and she lived in the capital in the castle with Isbeth for several years. And then Isbeth sent her and Ian to Macedonia to the Tyrmans. But I think that she was the maiden before she went to Macedonia. And he started abusing her like as soon as she got there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do think it's something that Jennifer Armentrout has not told us yet. Right. There's a lot of confusion there still.
Yeah, I never really thought about it before, but I was like, so was she considered the maiden when she was here in the middle of this attack? And like
the Craven attack?
Yeah.
I don't know.
See, that's the thing. It's not clear.
She says that she can't remember.
Yeah. Well, which makes sense.
Yeah. So I don't think we know that yet.
I'd like to know.
Is it Alistair or Malik that is using the pretty little Poppy?
It's neither, right?
Who is it?
We don't know.
It's Colas.
Oh, is it Colas?
Oh, it is? Mm-hmm. Fucking Christ.
I thought we were just supposed to think it was, but we weren't positive.
I think that we're pretty sure,
are we sure?
If not 100% positive, that it's Colas.
So let me bring the listeners back around because we've gotten off on a tangent.
I know.
So Poppy has nightmares about this Craven attack, and during the attack, in her dreams, someone is saying, what a pretty little Poppy. Pull the petals and watch it bleed or something like that.
Pick it
and watch it bleed.
Yeah,
and
any longer.
You're supposed to think for a long time it was Alistair, and then you're supposed to think it was Malik. So why do we think it's Colas?
Because in the War of Two Queens, when she is in the capital trying to get to Castile to free him, she hears that voice like say something else to her. I can't remember what it is though, but she hears that voice again and recognizes it as that voice from her dream. And then later at the end of the book, we find out about Colas and the whole, like, that's what Isbeth's whole goal is. And I would have to look it up specifically, but there's something there about finding out about Colas where it's like, oh, that's the voice that she's been
Because hearing. I know you can do this, I would appreciate it if you would send me that chapter.
I'll look it up.
Thank you. Because I would be like,
write it down.
I would be like, dude, I'll never be able to find that. But I know you'll be gone for 5 minutes tonight and you'll be like, found it.
Well, and also one of the teasers that JLA recently released in the Jaylanders group from A Fire in the Flesh, which has Colas as a major character in it. One of the teasers is somebody in that book saying that same thing about poppies. Like a pretty little poppy. And Serafina is like, that's super creepy. And like, that's the whole teaser.
Weird.
So I'm assuming that it's Colas that she's talking to. But we don't know that for sure yet. We'll find out in December.
Interesting.
Whenever that is.
Well, since we've gone...
Blood and Ash story time.
Since we have talked about the whole series in 15 minutes, can we take a quick cocktail break?
I was just going to say I need a refill.
Craft cocktails don't have to be fussy or ingredient heavy. Make and Muddle is here so that you can have a delicious 3-ingredient cocktail every time. Spend more time reading and less time mixing. Make and Muddle. Cocktail evangelists here to spread the good news about booze.
So then in chapter 18, we find out that Hawk basically tattled to Victor that Poppy was out on the rise, which I thought was just really funny. And Victor is like pretty mad. And again, Victor is kind of like Hawk, where it's like, I understand why you are like this, but I wish that you wouldn't. But he basically just like gives her a talking to, basically, and is like, please be more careful. Like, please don't give the Duke any more reason to mess with you. And then we cut to the worst pep talk in the history of the world.
And the worst pep rally I've ever witnessed.
I know, it's horrible. The Duke and the Duchess are basically, I mean, it really is kind of like giving a pep talk about like, yeah, guys, the Craven were here and they definitely made it to the top of the rise and it's 100% going to happen again. But what did you expect when you are horrible people? Like, that's basically what they say.
Oh, absolutely. Can I point out that the Duchess or the Duke is like, because of the God's blessings, the rise didn't fall last night. And then Poppy's like, I wondered exactly how the God's blessing had kept the wall from falling. It had been the guards, men like the archer, who had chosen death over allowing the Craven to come over the top. And before I even read that sentence, I was like, the rise didn't fall really because of Poppy.
Well,
she was shooting the Craven off of the archer towers.
True. Well, and the Duke and the Duchess are really like giving themselves a lot of credit.
Yeah, they're like, we talked to the gods and told them. Yeah,
right.
But also, I mean, are we supposed to assume that they're a lot like the Atlanteans, where they can hear everything? Because Hawk is like, well, that'll surely ease fears.
I honestly am not sure. I know that they're like super fast and super strong, but we don't see evidence. What?
I'm sorry, when you said that, all I could think was, you're unimaginably fast and strong.
You could ever outrun me.
Say it out loud. You're an Atlantean.
Yeah. We don't see them having super hearing or super eyesight or anything the way that we do the Atlanteans. So I feel like they don't. I feel like they just have the strength and speed and stuff, but not really the sight and hearing.
So can I talk a little bit about conspiracy theories? Because in this part, it talks, the Duchess is like, well, we've spoken to the gods. And I'm like, well, how fucking convenient, right? Every time something goes against what the Duke and Duchess have told them or against what the Queen has said, they're like, oh, well, the gods said it was fine. For example, like Poppy taking off her veil. Right. They're like, oh, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, the Duke's like, the gods will not have any problem with what we're doing here today. While I beat you.
I'm like, well,
naked.
how did you ask permission? Like, you know what I mean? Right. And so I really wanted to start thinking about conspiracy theories. And really, there is a lot that goes into this in the terms of, later on in the book, there are a lot of dissenters that really hate Poppy because they're like, how could you not have known? You didn't see all of this happening. So in a few minutes, I'm going to talk about kind of what the Ascended said. But also I want to point out that like, that's your whole world and all you've been taught. Why would you question it ever?
Well, and not only that, they assumed the same things about her that Cass did. That Hawk did about what kind of person she was.
Well, and they thought that she was just cool with it. And she never was. Right. Okay, so we've noticed that the Ascended use fear as a control method. We've talked about that several times. But they also use like the incredulity.
Incredulity?
Yeah. So they also use the incredulity.
The doubt.
So they also use doubt and treat the dissenters as though they must be crazy. So I looked into some conspiracy theories that probably a lot of our listeners have heard of that actually ended up being true, which is scary in itself, right? Because we hear about conspiracy theories all the time and we're like, well, that can't be true. And then some of this shit does actually happen. So the first ones of these were found on readersdigest.com and iflscience.com. I don't know what IFL stands for.
I fucking love science.
I bet it is.
I think it is. Yeah.
I think it is. Okay, so we're going to play a game of true or false. Okay. Okay.
Crap.
So, true or false? The CIA is testing LSD on Americans as a form of mind control and behavioral modification.
True.
I'm going to say true.
True. The CIA started using LSD on test subjects without their knowledge, and it was a program that you've probably heard of called MK Ultra.
Yep.
Right? So several people were left mentally disabled, and one even committed suicide. due to these tests, right? And there's some really good podcast episodes if you ever want to look more fully into MK Ultra, and even a book was written about it. Okay, number 2, true or false? Big tobacco companies buried evidence for decades that cigarettes cause cancer.
Oh, for sure.
Very true. So Philip Morris found indisputable evidence that smoking caused lung cancer in the 1950s, but didn't disclose it until the 1990s.
Wow.
So 40 years they knew
Wow.
that smoking caused lung cancer and didn't tell anybody.
That is greed personified, everybody.
Right. Okay, number 3. Evidence of aliens is buried in the southwestern part of the United States.
I'm going to say false on that.
I'm really thinking about it.
I'm like, because I don't think it's, well, I don't
mean,
know. Is
Area
Roswell
51 Area 51 is like, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm going to say true.
So
True.
It's true, kind of. Okay. Not the types of aliens you're thinking of. So there is evidence of ET buried in a landfill, but again, not the way you think. So Atari. And if you don't remember what Atari is, it was one of the first home gaming systems, right? It's where Pitfall came from and Pong and all of those. So Atari created an E.T. the extraterrestrial video game, but it failed so miserably that the company literally buried it in a landfill in the Southwest. So,
kind of sad.
the Roswell thing, no one knows if that's true or not. So that's why I didn't even really go into that. Okay, true or false? Free health care from the government is being used to hurt you, or was being used to hurt you.
False?
What do you think, men?
I mean, I want to say false, but I feel like it's true.
So the fear behind the COVID vaccine was for a reason, and I'll tell you why. And this was something I already knew about, but looking more into it, I was like, oh my gosh. Okay, so it is true. In the 1940s, people that were enrolled in something called the Tuskegee experiment were promised free health care if the government could monitor their health for 6 months. So they did get free health care, but they were never promised effective health care. So despite penicillin being readily available by the late 1940s, the people in the study were living with syphilis, which can be fatal without treatment. So participants were denied antibiotics until the 1970s. So 30 years, people in this study, they got free health care. They didn't get effective health care. So
Can I ask a clarifying question real quick? Did
Yeah.
they give the people syphilis, or did the people have syphilis?
I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay.
So some people in the study already had syphilis. They had a control group of people without until they got syphilis, and then they moved them over to the syphilis group. So by the 1970s, 28 people had died from syphilis. 100 had passed away due to the disease's complications, and 40 spouses had been infected with the STD.
That weren't even a part of this.
That weren't even a part of the group.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So, yes, they were giving people syphilis. So, also, 19 children were diagnosed with syphilis at birth from the birth canal. So, to add insult to injury, this study was focused on the Black community.
Yeah, I've heard of
And the reason that researchers claimed that it was okay is because they were trying to give the real life method of Black people don't go to the doctor anyway. That was their reason behind it.
Oh my God.
So a lot of people are like, well, no wonder Black people don't trust
Exactly.
healthcare, right?
I was
It's
just about to
insane.
say.
And this isn't, I mean, I'm not going to get into all this and I didn't go into deep research, but there's a whole story about another woman that had cervical cancer and she died and they used her cervical cells for research without permission. And like her whole family is like, what the fuck? You didn't have rights to her
you
body
can't
to do
just
that.
take
So I forget what her name is. It's Henrietta something. I'll put it in the show notes, but it's a really kind of a scary story. Okay. So I've already mentioned that a lot of the dissenters don't really understand how Poppy couldn't see the deceit within the Ascended, right? And it just seems so easy from the outside, but there were a few clues that the dissenters' conspiracy theory was true, even if they had never been to Atlantia, right? So, because a lot of people would be like, oh, well, they've met an Atlantean or they've been to Atlantia. A lot of these dissenters haven't been, including the Tulises. Okay, so number one, we know that conspiracies that are true use fear to control the populace, right? Number two, only certain people within Solus have spoken to the gods, in theory, right? The ascended can change the rules of the gods at their will, which we've already talked about. The ascended are never punished for displeasing the gods, only the people that have not ascended, which is a red flag.
The people who don't get to talk to the gods.
Right, exactly. No one sees the second and third sons and daughters after they're given to the gods, which is a point that's made in this chapter where Castiel's like, well, fuck, if they would just show them to us, we'd be fine.
Easy solution.
Right? Because he's playing it cool, even though we know at this point he's super pissed because he's like, we're right, and they have killed them, and that's why you never see them. Okay, so another big red flag is that the ascended will not explain the ascension or the right to Poppy because they are using her. And then the last one is that no one in Solus is allowed to ask questions about any of these things. Yeah. Otherwise, they suddenly become murdered, or they go missing, or they become a craven. So, I think it's really terrifying to know that in real life, these things that people are like, it's a conspiracy, don't believe them, have been people in power going like, no, they're crazy. Don't listen to a word that they're saying, which is essentially what the Duke and Duchess do. Even at the end of this chapter, whenever the dissenter throws the hand up on the balcony, the Duke goes, oh, well, the gods just showed us one.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's not how that worked. He was pissed.
Right.
Yeah.
And he wanted to throw Craven's hand at you, which I fully stand by. So, yeah.
Well, yeah. So leading up to that, the hand throwing. I'm gonna throw hands.
Can we call it the hand job from here on out? Leading up to the hand job.
So Poppy her gift kind of like swells out of her without her control, and she's feeling anger, right? Which is exactly what happened at that like city hall meeting or whatever it was a few chapters back. And she's noticing the blonde man, which is the same guy from the meeting a few chapters before. And she's noticing some other people too. Like she's feeling that from other people. So she points it out to Victor, who tries to point it out to Hawk, and Hawk's like, yeah, I got it. I'm like,
bro,
watching him for 20
I've been
minutes.
watching 5 people move forward.
Yeah, I've been watching him for the past 20 minutes. And so they're all like,
hold on, can I ask a clarifying question? We're supposed to, later in the series, we know that these people aren't connected to Hawk, but they're using the mantra of from blood and ash we will rise.
They're only connected to Hawk in that they're dissenters.
They're
and they
dissenters,
support
but
Atlantia.
he did not tell them to do this work.
As far as we know, no. So everybody's starting, well, not everybody. Tawny and Poppy and Hawk and Victor are starting to get kind of like tense and nervous because they're seeing like something is happening. And the guy, starts yelling and throws the hand, which I wrote down. I wrote down that he throws a craven hand up at the Duke. I wish he had hit him. That's what I wrote down.
So what doesn't work here is I wish he had given the Duke a hand job.
I know, right? I do not wish that. Oh my gosh.
I kind of wish he'd gone up to him with the hand in his hand and like smacked him
Slapped
across the
it
face
like
with
they
it.
like they did with gloves in the duel, right? Like, you disgust me, sir. So go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say one thing I really like, just writing wise. I love that the guy that throws the hand is like, "You are stealing and killing our babies," and I'm like, JLA is straight up telling us one of like the biggest plot twists of the whole story, and she just straight out tells us kind of close to the beginning of the book.
But again, because we're still under this theory that they're crazy, we believe right. We know like something's up with the Duke and Duchess, but we're like, well, surely like they wouldn't. They're serving the gods,
just like Poppy, right? Like
we've become the unreliable narrator almost.
Because Poppy is like, I understand why people feel that way, but like that was taking it too far. Yeah. Like accusing them of something like that without having any evidence, like that's just not okay. And we as the reader feel that exact same way, and so we get this huge plot twist and kind of brush it off.
Is that in book 4 later that we actually find out in War of Two Queens that they are feeding on the kids, or is that in Crown of Gilded Bones?
That's the first time that she sees it. in the temples like that.
I
but-
feel like it, like, before it was kind of like still a rumor, right? If you're looking at it from Poppy's point of view, like they've told her, but she's like,
They've
okay,
told
and she
her.
believes them. But I feel like in book 4 is when you're like, oh, fuck.
I mean, yes, book 4 is the first time that she sees it firsthand in the temples with the priests and priestesses. But in book 2,
oh, I forgot the priest and priestesses are
yeah,
eating them too.
In book 2, when they're in New Haven and Lord Cheney and Ascended comes and tries to like get Poppy, he uses a kid.
That's
And,
right. Yeah.
he like has a kid that he's like in chokehold or whatever.
Kind of like hostage situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so Poppy is like, you let him go and I'll come with you.
Right.
And then she finds out later that he killed the kid.
He still
anyway.
killed him,
And,
yeah.
And Castile is like, I mean, he at least didn't feed on him, but he definitely still killed that kid. And so
Right.
that's when she knows, like, no, they for real do this.
Yeah.
But she doesn't see it in the context of the religion.
But even
until
though
book 4.
JLA's telling us this all through 3 books, I feel like in book 4 it's still a huge twist. And to your point that like she keeps telling us this is happening, and we're
Right.
like, okay, that's messed up. That's messed up.
but, like,
and then
oh,
in
We
book
were shocked when it
right, but then in book 4 you're like, what the fuck is happening right now?
Well, because in book 4, it's like a massive pit of
Yeah.
bodies, right?
It's so sad.
It is
It's
very.
not just and also in book 2, that Lord Cheney guy, he kills Mrs. Toulis,
Right.
And no one ever sees the baby.
Oh, I didn't
again.
think about that.
Yeah.
Oh
And
my
so
god, that's fucked up.
You don't see anything happen to the baby, but like Mrs. Toulis is back without her child, and it's just like gone
It's
forever.
just gone.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
And
I'm not
so-
gonna sleep tonight. Thanks
Sorry.
a lot for that.
Sorry.
You're not. You don't look sorry.
You know what's ironic about Poppy going, well, why would you even say that without any evidence? She's been told things without evidence all her
I know.
life.
I know.
But I think
Yeah.
it's because she's questioning it. She's like, okay, so help, like you need to show me this. Is
Yeah, if you're
essentially
gonna
what
give
she's
me
an
An alternative.
Yeah,
you
I
have
guess
to
so.
prove
But it
the
just it was just
alternative.
very
Yeah.
ironic that that's
No,
what
I
she
agree.
said.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I kind of wonder if where she's coming from with that is like, well, I'm supposed to believe this with no evidence. So if you want me to not believe the thing I've been told my entire life, you have to give me evidence. You know what I mean?
It's like the burden of proof is on the people that are challenging her world.
challenging the status quo for sure.
So I will say, even rereading this, and this is my 6th read of this book, and I just read these like 2 years ago, you all, but they are for me my comfort read.
Me too.
And so when it talks about throwing the hand up on the stage, or the balcony, because I've read these, I literally wrote in my book this time, I'm like, oh my God, is that Jericho's hand? Because I thought that would be so rad. And then it ended up being a Craven's, like literally like 4 sentences later. And I just wrote, nope, LOL. But I would have loved if that had been Jericho's hand. That would have been perfect. But it's also the first time that we hear from Blood and Ash, we will rise, which gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, I literally did not even register that was the
that
first
came out?
time.
Really?
That was the first time. That
Well,
we
and
heard it.
they really, we will learn later in this book, really convolute what that means to the Atlanteans, and we find out the real meaning of it much, much later.
Don't they? I mean, they don't say it like a chant or whatever, but don't they say the words from Blood and Ash We Will Rise when they're talking about the attack on Rylan and Poppy in the garden? Because wasn't it etched into the arrow?
I think it was etched into the arrow, but we never heard anyone say it.
don't think we heard
like, this is the first time they really chant it as a
this
group.
is essentially a battle cry, right? Mm-hmm,
right.
And so I wanted to kind of look into that because I thought, is it really like a battle cry or is it just sort of like a slogan? So I went to look for the definition of what a battle cry is, and it's a word, phrase, or sound that is shouted by soldiers in battle, but it's also a phrase or saying that is used to make people support an idea or a cause. So that's kind of where I see it. And then another very cool definition I found was from Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, The Dawn of the Dreadfuls by Steve Hawkinsmith. This is a quote from that book. A battle cry, Mr. Bennett said, is a warrior's calling card, Only it does not say, "Good afternoon, I have come for tea and crumpets." It says, "Death has come for you. Flee or be killed where you stand."
Oh my God, I love that.
Doesn't that give you a little bit
That's
of goosebumps?
awesome.
Yeah.
I love that so
like,
much.
I'm kind of picturing that now when he's saying that with all his fervor. He's like, "From blood and ash we will rise." This is what he believes in. This is the one phrase that takes everything that these dissenters are fighting for and believe in, that they throw out there and they pack it all into this one phrase. So it made me wonder, like, what are some other battle cries that we've had in like history?
Well, there's a couple movie ones I can think of.
Well, I've got some of them.
I'm sure you do.
We have a game later to play.
Ooh.
So
You know I like to win.
I know, right? So in history, there were a few that I thought were really strange, but kind of cool. I don't know, and surprising. So the first one is the rebel yell, which is used by the Confederate soldiers during the Civil War. And it's debated what it actually sounded like, but some say it was a shrill yelp that resembled the call of a coyote.
Sounds about right.
And then some say it was just like a banshee scream. And I'm like, okay, so who wants to do it?
Isn't that's Billy Idol, right?
What?
Yeah.
Rebel yell.
Oh.
Yeah.
We want more.
When you were like, we were not really sure what it sounded like. I wanted really badly.
It sounds like Billy Idol.
All I thought was Ross on Friends going,
But we also know that the Union Army veteran and writer Ambrose Bierce described it as the ugliest sound that any mortal ever heard. So can you imagine you're in battle and then whatever this is, I'm just picturing it. It kind of makes me laugh.
well, it was a bunch of dumb white old dudes. Of course it sounded stupid.
It makes me think of Dumb and Dumber. Like, you want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Oh my God.
But and then you think apparently it sort of worked.
But I was
Who
trying.
started that?
Okay, I don't want to go into your game to see if you put this one in here, but there is a show that we love that has a battle cry, but it's not actually words. So I want to see if it's in your game.
Okay. It might not be because I think mine are all words. Also, there was a legendary Byzantine general named Flavius Belisarius, which is super fun to say. And he was a stickler for timing. And reportedly, and again, this is like speculation kind of because this was so long ago, but reportedly he delayed a battle for days before suddenly calling to his troops, "Quick, while guide isn't watching." That became their battle
Was he
cry.
in Ascended where he's like, "It's cool, I asked the gods"?
Yeah,
no
I know,
problem.
right? So that was that.
He told me he was
his
going to
battle
the
cry.
store real quick.
Can you imagine being a troop though, sitting there for days and days and days, and then you're waiting for him to say, "Quick, while God isn't watching"?
Yeah.
Like
an
I
odd
want,
one.
I want to like be a fly on the sword, I guess. To be like, well, why does he think God's not watching?
See, I feel like it would make me feel like
You were-
vulnerable.
Well,
you know what I mean?
It would make me feel like I'm doing something bad.
What do
Like,
you
I'm
mean
just
God's not
defending
watching?
him.
Because I kind of need him to protect me
I know,
right now.
I know. That's how I feel like I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think
That
I
was
would
a
like
strange
that.
one. Another one that I think everybody's probably heard of is bonsai. So that was used to encourage Japanese soldiers to fight to death rather than surrender. And it's short for Tenno Haika Banzai, which means long live the emperor. And basically infantrymen were trained to make a last-ditch suicide attack when they were almost sure of defeat instead of just like it's like balls
Yeah.
to the wall.
So they were like the running suicide bombers,
Right.
essentially.
Well, it's like it was used by the kamikaze pilots when they would fly their planes into enemy warships during World War II. So,
Well, and I just want to throw this out there that I've never heard of that.
oh really?
Yeah. So,
Oh my gosh! See, I
so
thought it was
anybody that hasn't heard of that, don't feel bad.
I haven't heard of it either.
No, that's okay. That's
Mindy, you're just so fucking smart.
well. The only reason I think it was in Karate Kid. That's why I said that.
No, you know what they were saying, not bonsai. They were saying wax on, wax off.
The bonsai tree is very important.
Well, but
in
no,
Karate
because he
Kid.
said. But there's one time when Mr. Miyagi gets drunk and he's like going bonsai. Anyway, that's what
Oh
I think
my.
of. That's what I think of. This one was my favorite. Before battle, Vikings would often invoke their warrior gods to give them the strength and power to defeat their enemies. And according to Norse mythology, in the very first war in the world, the god Odin flung a spear over the entire host gathered for the battle. And then the Viking kings and commanders would then copy that, having one warrior throw a spear over the enemy's heads, while the rest of the troops yelled, "Odin owns you all."
You know what that meant? Oh, Doyle rules.
Yes.
See, we're coming up with all kinds of fun battle cries. Those were some historical ones. But then I started thinking about pop culture ones, like you said, because that's where I always go. So, for example, because we're going to make this a little quiz, I'm gonna say the battle cry, and I want you all to tell me where it comes from.
Oh, crap.
So, but like, for example, Avengers Assemble, obviously the Avengers.
The Avengers.
Okay, I'm going to give some easy ones first. May the Force be with you.
Star Wars.
Freedom!
Braveheart.
Yep. This is my favorite. By the power of Grayskull, I have the power.
He-Man.
Yes.
And She-Ra, because She-Ra was she was my idol.
Wonder Twin powers activate.
Oh, God.
Well, it's Super Friends.
Oh.
Yeah.
Super Friends.
Friends. Oh, Captain, my captain.
Oh, that's Dead Poet Society.
This one's easy. Ducks fly together.
Mighty Ducks.
That's my favorite.
Quack.
Quack, 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 quack.
You guys are so cool.
This is our nerdiest thing.
Just a few more. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose.
Oh, that's Friday Night Lights.
Yep.
Oh, I never watched that.
Allons-y.
Oh, that's Doctor Who.
Yes. Cowabunga.
Oh,
Ninja Turtles.
Yep. Show me the money.
Jerry Maguire.
Yep. And suit up.
Oh, How I Met Your Mother.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what was yours, Deb?
Mine was you did do Braveheart, which is what I was thinking, and then I was thinking the one without words is my main battle cry. I think of like modern television in the last 5 years is Outlander.
I was thinking
when
that
they're
too,
on the battle on the field for the Battle of Culloden, and their battle cry is so overwhelming, and I think it's the way that it's shot and the fact that Jamie, it's episode 1 of season 2 or 3. Three. And he is dying in the middle of the field, remembering this battle that they've had and remembering like sending Claire back through the stones. And it is, first of all, the way that they shoot Sam Heughan's eyes in that scene. Oh my God. They're so fucking beautiful. And then their battle cry is so emotional. And them like trying so hard, to fight back. It is. Yes. It's an amazing piece of television.
I think that's sort of where the whole battle cry notion comes from. It's that passion behind whatever it is you're fighting for, or whatever it is that whatever cause you're behind. And that's why I got goosebumps when the guy threw that craven hand, like he chucks it up there and says, "From blood and ash we will rise," and I'm like, oh my gosh. So like when you first read it, you don't get that as much. But then when you realize where it comes from and like sort of
what it means,
the feeling behind it when he says it, and then when you learn what it really kind of started from, I don't know, it just gives me chills.
Well, it makes me think of book 2, Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, when
Blood and Ash story time.
Yeah, the like hundreds of royal guards are coming to Spessa's end, and they're like super outnumbered. And Castiel says to Poppy, they are paid to fight as soldiers, but we fight like with heart, and it means something to us. And like that's what from blood and ash we will rise.
Yes.
That's what it's all about, right? Like fighting with heart. Yeah, I did look it up at the beginning of your deep dive. They do talk about how the arrow is engraved with the Dark One's promise, but Poppy just thinks it.
Yeah.
So we see the words.
Okay.
Yeah.
We see the words.
It's
from
the first
Blood and
time
Ash
it's
We Will Rise.
screamed in this
but
scene.
Nobody had actually said it. It was just her thinking it out loud.
Right. I mean, but here, my thought is a maker, someone who is a creative maker, is I'm like, who the fuck had time to carve that into the arrows?
The arrows?
And to an arrow, well, I guess that arrow was important for the record.
That one,
and they did want people to think it was the dark one. So I think they thought that, well, I know they thought that they would shoot Rylan and they would take Poppy so she wouldn't be there to tell the story. So they needed the arrow to be inscribed with the Dark One's motto.
Well, that's
so they would know who had done it. Yeah.
It's like a calling card.
But I'm like, shit, they didn't have a laser back then. Who carved that in their arrows? God, that takes a long time. And did it look like shit or did it look great? That's what I want to know.
Oh, I'm sure.
as a
Maybe it got
creative.
branded in. They had like
Yeah.
a...
Everything, everything Hawk does. He does
It's great.
with style.
Yes.
Not with style. It's great.
So I really kind of zeroed in on the fact that it was a hand for some reason that got thrown. Because I'm like, why not anything else from a craven? Like, why not just a finger or
the head.
Well, and I will be honest, as many times as I've read this, I remember before reading this that I thought it was a head.
Yeah, and I'm like, maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe it does. So I did a mini deep dive about hands in literature. And I found a lot of like really generic stuff. So I'm going to just share a little bit. One thing that I found is from University of Michigan, but it's just UMich.edu. And I think this is just somebody's like thesis or something. It was called Hands in Literature. The hand is the most frequently symbolized part of the human body. It gives blessing and it is expressive. In general, it is strength, power, and protection, or generosity, hospitality, and stability. It is used in gestures of greeting and friendship. So those are all like very positive, right? So just keep that in mind.
I know I'm waving at you and now I'm flipping you off.
Right.
Like
See,
it can
I'm
really
thinking like all the different phrases like handshake, hand out,
hand job,
and hand job.
which is what we're calling this chapter.
So I found from oandplibrary.org, the hand represents the whole human. The hand is considered the highest achievement of primate evolution, which I thought was interesting, like the opposable thumb.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. The right hand and the left hand are used to symbolize dichotomies of good versus evil, gods versus demons, something that has duality. So one hand is only one side of that duality, which I'm going to come back to that in a second.
You're blowing my mind.
I know.
The hand can symbolize all kinds of different forms of human sentiment: blessing, saluting, benediction, oaths, condemnation, malediction, final judgment, love, hate, doubt, questioning, hospitality, judgment, rejection, and acceptance. So, therefore, these are my thoughts now based on that very small, I wouldn't even call it a deep dive. It was just a dive. A jump in a puddle.
Jump into the 3-foot section.
Yeah, the kiddie pool. So, therefore, throwing a corrupted hand of a craven is a violent portrayal of corrupted life. It would be a judgment on the Duke and the Ascended for creating the craven, for taking advantage of the situation to scare people, for stealing children and lying about it, and for not doing anything to protect Macedonia. Like, they weren't going out on the rise, like Castile or Hawk points out to Poppy, right? Like, they didn't do anything.
Well, and Poppy had already thought of that too.
Exactly. The corrupted hand of a craven is representative of the corruption of the Ascended, the blood on their hands, and the guilt at their feet, so to speak. Which I realized afterwards was like, haha, hands and feet, which I did not mean to do. They are the architects, the Ascended. They are the architects of the nightmare scape that the mortals suffer through. And so if a hand represents the whole,
right,
they're throwing like a corrupted hand from a craven.
I hadn't thought about that. That's so many layers of like corrupt government, corrupt cover up, corrupt,
Right.
because they're essentially pointing out like, you create these. Again,
Exactly.
JLA is telling us everything we need to know.
Right.
And we dumb.
And we're like, that's crazy.
Like crazy
I
dissenter.
can't believe he threw a hand at them.
I know, right? I tried to look for hands being used as like symbolism.
I tried to look for hand jobs.
No, you're the only one that's thinking
I'm sorry.
where I went.
That's what this chapter should have been called.
Well-
Get your mind out of the gutter, Whitney.
I couldn't find anything specific that like made any sense. So I just like thought off the top of my head. And so the two things that I thought of kind of in pop culture. So you're going to have a field day with this, I feel like. With the jokes. The Hand of Glory.
Oh.
I know, right? So the Hand of Glory is in a lot of different like lore stories, whatever. I'm pretty sure it's an episode of Supernatural, right?
It's the hand of God, is what they call
Yeah,
it.
the hand of God.
Well, if the Hand of Glory is supposed to be like the hand of like a thief that was executed for their crimes or whatever, and if you have it, you're able to take anything or something?
Well, yeah, because in the supernatural episode, they take the soul of Lucifer, right?
I don't remember.
What?
Honestly, I know.
Shame on you.
My brain is full of book details.
I have a pop culture reference that I'm really hope you're going to point out, and if not,
Oh, I only have 2, and that
Okay.
was one.
All right.
So it's probably not it.
Keep going.
The other one that I thought of just off the top of my head is from Pride and Prejudice, the 2005 movie.
with Keira Knightley.
With Keira Knightley, yeah,
Okay.
and Matthew Faden or Fadden, I'm not sure how to say it. He is Mr. Darcy, and so there's a scene toward the end of the movie where Mr. Darcy and oh my gosh, Elizabeth Bennet.
What kind
I know, I
of
was
book
like,
reader
hold
are
on,
you?
oh, what's her
And
name?
for the record, I couldn't remember it either.
So they like don't hate each other at this point. They do like are into each other, and she shows up at his house thinking he's not there to like, because apparently you just like can take tours of rich people's mansions when they're not at home back in Jane Austen.
I mean, we wouldn't
So-
know.
Homerama.
Right.
I'm
Well,
like,
so
I feel like my house is fine, but like, if you show up and want to take a fucking tour, I'm going
Right.
to tell you to leave.
Well, his house is fantastic. So he shows up and she's like, "Oh crap!" And she tries to run away because she's like super embarrassed that she's there. And so anyway, he runs.
Do you think
after
she
her.
wanted to look in his like Long John's drawer or something?
No. Well,
Yes, she did.
Maybe. So he eventually walks her back to her carriage, and he like takes her hand and helps her up the carriage. And when he walks away, he like flexes his hand, and it's supposed to be like he feels like the charged energy between them, like the kind of sentiment.
It
of,
is like the part of that
yes,
book
like,
and movie.
I'm never gonna wash this hand again because it touched this,
Ew.
right? Like that kind of thing. And so I thought that specifically embodied this whole thing of like the hand is representative of the whole person, right? Like
Right.
that hand flex, and the camera in the movie like focuses in on that, and that's like the only thing that you can see in the shot, but it represents his feelings for her, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought that fit the idea of like the hand is representative of something much bigger. But those were the only ideas that I
So where the hand is bigger than the whole is in Friends when Joey is in Vegas. And he finds his hand twin.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not that he finds his hand twin, it's the song he sings.
This hand is your hand.
This hand is my hand.
Oh,
No,
wait, that's your hand.
no, wait, that's my hand. I love that you and I could do a duet without even practicing that shit.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I did not think about that at all.
And Regina Phalange.
Yeah,
Phoebe's always Regina Phalange.
yeah. Oh my gosh. So, yeah. Anyway, so the dissenter throws the hand at the Duke. And then chapter 19 is basically Poppy, Hawk, and Tawny talking about this dissenter and the accusations that he's made against the Duke. And this is where Poppy says what we already talked about. Like, you can't just say stuff like that, right? Like you have to have evidence. And this is where Hawk says, well, if they would just let people see their third sons and daughters one freaking time,
That's all you gotta do.
It wouldn't be an issue. And Poppy's like, that's a really good point. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to admit that you have a really good point, but it is an excellent point. And then chapter 19 finishes out with Poppy talking to the Duchess, where she's basically like, I've noticed that my gift is changing, and I thought maybe you would have some information about that. And the Duchess is basically like, yeah, that's totally normal. Don't worry about it. But also don't talk about this with the Duke because he'll freak out about it.
So I want to know, Whitney, story time for Blood and Ash. I want to know why the Duchess asks Poppy to see if she can feel anything from her, because that's super weird knowing that they know that Poppy can't feel anything from the Ascended. Right. So why did she ask Poppy to do that? It makes me wonder if the Duchess is hiding a secret like Queen Ileana was, where she's not Ascended or something. But also
she's definitely Ascended.
Well, I mean, she is, but like, what is it that made her do that, right?
Well, to answer that question, I don't know. Because we don't ever, at this point in all of the books, she has not been able to feel anything from any ascended in any situation.
Right. So
Even
why
from her
would
brother.
so why would the Duchess ask her to do that? What was she so paranoid about?
I really don't know. I am still not super clear what the Tiermans know or have been told about Poppy. Because if she knows that Poppy is Isbeth's child, does she also know that Poppy is Erie's child? Does she know that she's the granddaughter of Nyktos? And if she does know that, she might be questioning, like, you should have a crap
And
ton of power.
that's what I was wondering about. I think that she does know, and she's nervous because she's like, holy fuck, it's all about to come down around us. And if you
Maybe.
bring it up to the Duke, he's going to realize that too and kill you.
Maybe. But would he even have been able to kill her based on the power that she has? Do you
I
know
mean,
what I
we've talked a million times about how, Poppy, in the books, you think at first she's the harbinger of death. It's actually Ileana, or Isbitch, as we like to call her. But Poppy gets so nervous about her anger overriding her feelings for things and making her power lash out. And we've said a million times that if she had gone to ascend and they had tried to do these things to her, she would have fucked up everybody because she wouldn't have learned how to control anything. And they would have really put themselves in danger by not teaching her how to do that like Hawk did. Or Castile at that point. Spoiler alert.
Yes, that's true. But also, part of her issue with her anger is not anything she can do anything about, because we learn in A Light in the Flame, I think it's Nyktos, somebody tells Seraphina, you are not like messed up, you have primal power in you, and that's why you are like kind of detached and have like.
But my point is that Castile really helps Poppy understand her anger and how to like harness it in a quote unquote healthy way. I wouldn't say it's healthy, but healthy for the situation, because I really think that if she had gone to the Ascension without the support of those people around her, she would have killed everybody, because she would have gotten mad and not been able to control her. Much like the roof of the temple when she gets to Atlantia, right? She freaks the fuck out.
Yes, this is true.
Yeah, and I think she really would have just like ended the world, unfortunately.
Maybe she still will.
Maybe. I mean, I hope not. I kind of need her and Castile to do it a few more times first.
Yeah. The more I think about this whole thing with the Duchess, is I'm wondering if she's just unsure, because obviously, like, she knows. Wait, does she know about the culling? Like, do they understand that
Well,
sort of?
Yeah, she would know about the culling, because either Duchess Tierman either knows the actual truth about Poppy,
Keep going.
or she knows like a partial truth about Poppy.
This is why I think she knows the whole truth. So you give me yours and then I'll give you mine.
Well, so the in book 2, A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, Duchess Tierman shows up at Spess's End with like the hundreds of ascended. Well, they're not really ascended, but the hundreds of guards. Right?
That's right. That's where she dies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so she tells Poppy that Queen Ileana is her grandmother, and that Coralina basically like was her mom, but Coralina was.
Why make that lie?
That's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm like, did she actually know the truth and made that lie up, or did she think that was the truth? You know?
So we know that the Duke and Duchess know certain truths, and that Isbeth has been really just fucking with everyone's head. So a big truth that I feel like the Duke and Duchess know is whenever she is talking to Poppy about the first maiden, who is technically Seraphina, right?
I thought it was Millie.
Okay, so here's why I think maybe Duchess Tierman thinks it's Seraphina, because you're right, it is Millie. So she says, we do not speak of her ever. Her name is not worthy of our lips, nor the air we breathe. And it is because saying Seraphina's name wakes her up.
That is true about Seraphina.
Right. So I feel like Isbeth is telling the Duke and Duchess enough where they feel like they're important and they need to know things. And so they're like, she has told them enough to where the Duke and Duchess will not go digging more on the First Maiden, even though she has told them the wrong information about who the First Maiden is, because they're like, well, if you say her name out loud, she is going to wake up and fuck you up, which she does, right? Poppy says her name out loud.
So, yes, that...
But no.
Well, no, I mean, not necessarily. We just don't have enough information yet, because that's all true. Then that
You know,
all
I'm
makes
very
sense.
confident.
Oh, I know.
But it never works out in my favor. Not in books. It works out in my favor in like real life. In the book world, it never works out.
The problem with that theory, but again, this may not be a problem. We just don't know yet. And maybe book 3 from the Flesh and Fire series will answer this. We know that Seraphina and Nyktos went through a lot to completely erase her identity as Seraphina.
But Seraphina was supposed to be the First Maiden, wasn't she?
I mean, sort
Kind of?
yes, because she was being groomed for Nyktos, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when she got ascended and became like the primal of life and death or whatever, we are told, Reaver tells Poppy like she chose to stay anonymous, and they like erased everything about her life. And Nyktos tells Poppy that he and the consort like plunged the world into like the Dark Ages and removed all the information about all the primals and all that stuff. So theoretically, nobody should know anything about Seraphina at all.
But I feel like there's enough going around where they're like, we don't say her name out loud. I feel like that had to come out from somewhere.
Everybody that knows the consort knows that she wants to stay anonymous and knows that speaking her name will wake her up, and that they do it out of respect for her, not so much out of fear for her.
So it makes me wonder then what the Duchess' motivations are right here. Because she tells very blatant lies. Like she says, like, the First Maiden's actions put her on a path that ended with her death. The Dark One killed her, which we know. Well, we don't know who Duchess Tierman is saying is the Dark One, essentially, right?
She wants Poppy to believe that it's Castile.
Right, exactly. But we don't know if that's actually what Duchess Tierman thinks, or if she's just outright lying, or...
And then, I mean, we're...
Story time
we're
from
gonna
Blood
have
Nash.
to do, I'm just thinking, like, we're going to have to do, like, 55 bonus episodes. It's just so much.
Right when the season ends, the cast POV is coming out, so you know for a fact we'll be doing an episode about that. Whitney's taking notes about future things that we need to do, which is why we love her. Millie as the First Maiden.
Well, because I think we've talked about this before, and I don't want to get into it because it'll make the episode like so long.
You don't know my life.
But the gist of it is Castile, when he was being held captive by Isbeth, he was supposed to ascend Millie, and he couldn't because they were torturing and starving him. So his blood was not potent enough to actually ascend Millie. So Millicent actually like would have died instead of being ascended, because that was the original plan before Poppy was born. So technically, the Dark One Castile did kill Millie, but it wasn't him, it was Isbeth, because of her treatment of him,
right.
Which is why his brother is treated very differently.
And we don't know yet how the revenants are made, which is what Millie is, right?
Right. Not really. Yeah.
Again, I want to say for the third time this episode, JLA, you blow my mind.
I know, right? Well, so the whole thing with like the Duchess, who she thinks the First Maiden is, and if anybody would have known, if Isbeth would have known, if Seraphina was a First Maiden or whatever, that all boils down to Malek and what he knew about his mother and what he would have told his heartmate, which we don't know.
Right.
But Millie, for the record, does not know that she's Malek's heartmate, or hasn't acknowledged it, right?
Well, no, I'm talking about two different people.
Oh, Malik.
Millie and Malik are heartmates. We don't know if she knows
again.
that
Why
or
the
acknowledges
fuck are
that.
their names so similar?
I know, right?
That's why I want to call the brother Malik.
Malik, I know, to make it, yeah. So
But it's not,
I know, but
unfortunately.
like in every other person that has that name, that's how they say it.
Right.
So Old King Malik didn't tell anybody. And he was married to Eloana and did not tell her.
Who is Castiel's mother.
Castiel's mom. When he was married to her, he did not tell her who he actually was and like that he was Nyktos' actual son and not just a descendant, whatever.
That's kind of a big fib in a marriage.
But he did tell Isbeth, at least, like Nyktos was his dad. So maybe he told her about his mom and her history, whatever. If he knows, if he even knows all of that. Maybe they didn't even tell their kids. I don't know. Like, we don't know that. So
I can't wait to find out.
I feel like this is like a 25-minute answer to...
I don't remember what the question was.
What could have been like a really simple question. So I'm really sorry.
I think it all came from...
I apologize.
It all started with why is the Duchess so freaked out about trying to see if Poppy can read her.
And that's what I want to find out, because I don't think we really have an answer yet.
Well, so again, just like we talked about with the Duke, like what is the deal with the Duke and Poppy? Because I still think there's some kind of weird emotional connection. The same thing is true of the Duchess in this scene, because it talks about how she's gripping the arm of her chair.
Yeah, she breaks
and she's
the chair.
breaking the chair because she's gripping it so hard when they're having this.
So what is she so scared of? That's what I want to know.
Right. So she's having some kind. We don't know.
I really hope that JLA listens to this and she's like, and here's what I hope, that she's like, you have no fucking idea what you're talking about. I want her, like, she continues to blow my mind as much as, because here's the thing, before the podcast, we still talked about this shit. It's not like this is,
we have a podcast.
right, that this is not brand new information to us, right? And so it's not like we never thought about these things before, but like, what does JLA have up her sleeve? That's what I want to know. And
Who
She's a
knows?
magician.
I mean, if anyone is on her Jay Lander's Facebook page, she also is starting a new series this year, which I'm so fucking pumped about. I cannot wait, because this one's going to end and I'm probably going to cry myself to sleep.
I know. I'm going to be really upset.
I hate to say, and this is the pretentious part of me, I hate to say that a series that came out in the last 5 years is in my top series of all time, right? Because forever, The Witching Hour by Anne Rice has been my favorite book of all time, and this series bumps it out.
Yeah.
And I don't like that, because I want to be pretentious. And there's nothing wrong with liking a new series. It's just like The Witching Hour has been my favorite for 20 years, right?
But that's the beauty of books in general. Like, there's always something new to come out to, like, woo us in, but then there's always that familiarity. I mean, this is only the third time I've read this, which I think is like preposterous.
Loser.
I know. And you guys have read it so many times, but that's what's cool about it, is because you can, and then you can find something that, that blows your mind even more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like book talk is really, for me, I'm like, there are so many amazing books out there, and you should not be funneling yourself inside of like what you would normally read.
Yeah.
Agreed.
No, there's a ton of...
If you're not on Bookstagram, you need to go follow some book accounts and just get sucked in.
Yeah. Start with following
This is how I found
Our Nerdiest Thing.
This is how I found Hockey Romance.
Right, exactly. And we follow a lot of people on Instagram, and it's because we like to follow indie authors, and there's a lot of really wonderful fiction out there that no one knows about yet. So go follow some indie authors. They're great.
Yeah. Should we go into our nerdiest thing of the week? Because that's
this episode might have been mine. I think mine and Mindy's might be the same thing. So do you want to go first?
Well, yeah, I think mine starts out the same as yours. So this week was spring break here for our schools here in Louisville, Kentucky, and we wanted, none of us were going anywhere, and Whitney couldn't join us, and it made me really sad. But because she has kids that were actually at home.
Mine and Mindy's kids are old enough to be home alone.
Yeah. I only have one left in the house anyways.
Quit bragging.
Sorry.
Sorry, you'll get there.
And Deb's daughter came with us, so that was fun too. Anyway, we and another friend of ours and Deb's daughter drove down to Lexington, and we went to Joseph Beth Booksellers. And if you've never heard of this or know about it, it is an amazing bookstore. It's like 2 stories. You can get lost in there. There's a cafe. They've got all these little seating areas and all these fun places that you can sit. And we basically went, had lunch, sat our asses down in front of this fire and read, and then shopped, and then read some more. And so it was super fun. I mean, we spent hours and hours there. And then we went to books and half-price books. And closed that down too. But the really, really, really nerdy thing is that I started a book while we were there. It's a reread of a book called Beautiful Disaster by Jamie McGuire, and I'm rereading it because there's a movie coming out. And this is like a book I read
I need you to let me borrow it now that you're done with it.
Yeah, totally. I read it like I think it's from like 10 years ago. I mean, it's from around that time, 8 to 10 years. So anyway, now they're making a movie about it, and I wanted to reread it to kind of reacquaint myself with it. And so I started it there, and I got about halfway through almost, and then I went home and I stayed up until 4 a.m. reading the rest of it.
Been there.
Yeah.
My nerdiest thing really is the same thing. I will tell you, for me, I have really struggled this year to find a book journal that I like. I ordered one. I've talked about this on previous episodes. I ordered one off of Amazon because the one I used last year was on back order. And now in retrospect, I should have just fucking ordered it and waited. And I think I'm just going to go ahead and order it. But I got one, and the pages are thin like a dictionary. I don't like it at all. And instead of going in like date order, it goes in alphabetical order. And I'm like, no. What if I don't read any books that start with F? Like, no, that doesn't make sense to me. And so I made my own. I hate it because it doesn't feel like buttoned up enough. You know what I mean? For me to like put in what I read for the year. Yeah. And so at that store, I tried forever to find a new book journal. And so I think after this, I'm just going to go on Amazon and order the one. And here's the thing about ordering off Amazon. It's from an independent seller, which I really love, which is why it was on back order at the beginning of the year. And so I just need to wait and get the book journal that I really, really love.
And might I say, if you can't find it, what you want at Joseph Beth, it might not be out there.
I know. Well, here's the thing. Even the guy working at the register, he was like, we don't carry a lot of those. And I have found over the last couple years that if it's not something that's common, stores are just like, we'll just sell that shit online. Right. It's not like it used to be where you could go in and there were
browse a bunch of things.
Right. But I need to open the book journal and feel the pages and see it and do all of that. And I'm, again, super first world problem, but I need a new book journal. I really like to write about what I read about and then go back and look at it again.
I suggest that when you order it, you order like 3 or 4.
I know. Have you seen the guy on Instagram that's like, I can't do that because I'm Poe. I'm like, I can't order 4 at a time, Mindy, because I spent a bunch of money on books this week. Speaking of which, the book depository is going out of business. And honestly, by the time this posts, they go out of business on April 26th. So if this posts by then, it might already be out. But I spent $127 on that website, but I got like 15 books.
Nice.
And so that's why I can't afford to buy 5 book journals, because then I went to Joseph Beth with you and bought more books for my daughter.
So I just have a couple. One thing I nerded out about is the trailer for the Ahsoka show on Disney Plus, a Star Wars universe show. I'm really excited about it. I love all the Star Wars things, but they introduced this character's in, this is going to be my nerdiest thing right now.
The Mandalorian.
Well, yes, but also in Star Wars Rebels. Anyway, the live action character got introduced in The Mandalorian with my man, Pedro Pascal.
Who's Rosario Dawson, who I think is the most beautiful kick-ass woman on the planet.
Rosario Dawson, yeah. The other thing is me and my kids and husband watched The Greatest Showman, which is like, I don't know.
You haven't seen it yet?
No. What is it?
What?
6 years old or something
Yeah.
crazy?
Okay, so I forgot that you didn't go on our Ashland girls trip because we watched a sing-along episode of that. How have you not seen that?
I would have really enjoyed that.
Yeah, you would have, because it's amazing.
I wasn't able to go. But suck. I've been saying for a couple of years, like, we should watch this movie. I think the kids would like it. And Robbie's like, they wouldn't like that movie. And then last week, Robbie is like, you know what I think would be a really good movie to watch? Is The Greatest Showman. And I was like, are you serious? I've been saying this forever.
Here's the difference between me and you, because you're like, are you serious? And I would be like, are you fucking kidding me?
So we watched it and everybody loved it. So we've really been
good
listening to the soundtrack, and I'm trying to memorize all the songs so I can sing along. And
I can sing with you already.
Oh.
I love that movie.
I love that movie,
Here's
too.
the thing.
really good.
I don't love musicals on like television. Like watching Rent on like HBO Plus doesn't do it for me. But I went to see that with Mindy because she was like, I really, really, really want to watch this. And my husband was irritated with me because I don't watch musicals unless they're a play.
Yeah.
And I went to that and I came home and I was like, this is literally like one of the best things I've ever
It
seen.
is really good.
Yeah.
But
Now I'm going to watch it tomorrow.
I think I might add that another nerdy thing for all three of us was earlier this evening when we were waiting to do an interview with somebody and we decided to play Whitney sing this song.
Oh, you're going to see it. Don't worry about it. As long as Whitney's cool with it.
It was super fun. We had a good laugh and spent a
It
good
was
15
fun.
to 20 minutes making Whitney sing songs.
Can we tell
in
them?
certain genres with certain voices?
So we thought we sent the interview link to the author we were interviewing, but Whitney just sent it back to ourselves.
Yeah, I sent it from my email to the podcast email instead of sending it to the author.
Right. So we were like, where is she?
Yeah, like what's taking so long?
And then finally I messaged her and she's like, I keep refreshing and I don't see it. Good job, Whit.
That was my bad.
Again, you're really good at story time, not good at email.
No, not good at email.
What are we reading next week?
Yeah, next week we are reading chapters 20 and 21.
Bye.
Bye.